My name is Sarah Michelle Torres, and I'm 32 years old. I never thought the sound of my own doorbell could make my blood run cold, but there I was, standing in the marble foyer of my brand new luxury home, staring at the security monitor in complete disbelief. There they were. All of them. Standing on my pristine front porch like they belonged there, my parents, Robert and Linda Torres, my older brother Marcus with his wife Jennifer, and even my cousin Rachel who'd been the golden child since we were kids. They were dressed up, carrying gift bags and bottles of wine, acting like they'd been invited to my housewarming party. But here's the thing that made my hands shake as I reached for the door handle: these people hadn't spoken to me in 16 years. Not a single birthday call, Christmas card, or text message. Nothing. I'd been erased from their lives like I never existed. The last time I saw them, I was 16 years old, standing in our old kitchen while my mother screamed at me to get out and never come back. The last words my father said to me were, "You're no daughter of mine." All because I refused to lie for my brother when he got arrested for dealing drugs. Now here they were, showing up at my $1 million home in the hills, acting like nothing had happened. Like they hadn't thrown me away when I was still a child. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my silk dress, and opened the door with the sweetest smile I could manage. Well, I said softly, my voice honey smooth. If it isn't the Torres family reunion committee. My mother's face lit up like Christmas morning. Sarah! Sweetheart! We heard about your new house and thought we'd surprise you. My father stepped forward, arms outstretched for a hug I definitely wasn't giving. Princess, we're so proud of you. Look at this place. Marcus grinned, that same cocky smile that used to get him out of trouble. Little sis made it big. We always knew you would. I stood there, blocking the doorway, watching them lie through their teeth with such practiced ease it was almost impressive. Did they really think I'd forgotten? Did they think 16 years of silence could be erased with gift bags and fake smiles? Surprised? I repeated, tilting my head. Oh, I'm surprised all right. Surprised you managed to find my address considering you've never bothered to ask for it. The fake cheer flickered on their faces for just a moment, but they recovered quickly. Now Sarah, my mother said in that patronizing tone I remembered too well, we know we've had our differences, but family is family. We're here now, aren't we? Differences? The word came out sharper than I intended. Is that what we're calling it? But I caught myself. Not yet. I had plans for these people, and rushing into confrontation wasn't part of them. Instead, I stepped aside and gestured them in. Please, come in. Let me show you around. They filed past me into the foyer, and I watched their faces change as they took in the crystal chandelier, the imported Italian marble, the sweeping staircase that looked like something from a movie. I saw the flash of greed in my father's eyes, the calculating look my mother got when she was sizing up someone's bank account. This is incredible, Sarah, Rachel breathed, running her manicured fingers along the banister. You must be doing so well for yourself. I am, I said simply. Very well. As I led them through the house, past the chef's kitchen with its marble countertops, the living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, the home theater, the wine cellar, I watched them catalog every expensive detail. I could practically see the dollar signs adding up in their heads. So what exactly do you do? Marcus asked, trying to sound casual. I mean, to afford a place like this? I'm the CEO of a tech startup, I said. We went public last year. The looks they exchanged didn't escape my notice. Quick, meaningful glances full of opportunity and calculation. That's wonderful, honey, my mother cooed. You know, your father's been having some business troubles lately. The restaurant hasn't been doing well since the pandemic. And there it was. Not even 20 minutes into their surprise visit and they were already angling for money. Oh no, I said, my voice dripping with false concern. How terrible for you. I led them out to the backyard where my actual housewarming party was in full swing. About 50 people, my real friends, business colleagues, neighbors, were enjoying catered food and champagne by the infinity pool. The city sparkled below us as the sun set behind the mountains. My guests looked confused as I introduced my family. Some of them knew my story, knew that I'd been on my own since I was a teenager. They watched with curious expressions as my parents worked the crowd, introducing themselves as my proud parents and talking about how they'd always believed in Sarah. I excused myself and slipped inside, my heart pounding with a mixture of rage and anticipation. In my study, I opened a safe hidden behind a painting and pulled out a thick manila folder. 16 years of planning had led to this moment. When I returned to the party, my family was holding court near the pool, regaling my friends with stories about my childhood that were carefully edited to make them look like loving, supportive parents. I listened to my mother tell a story about teaching me to ride a bike, conveniently leaving out the part where she was too drunk to hold the bike steady and I crashed into a fence. "Can I have everyone's attention?" I called out, tapping my champagne glass with a knife. The party quieted down, all eyes turning to me. My family beamed, probably expecting some sort of heartwarming reunion speech. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight to help me celebrate this milestone," I began. "This house represents everything I've worked for, everything I've built from nothing. And I do mean nothing." I looked directly at my parents as I continued. "You see, some of you might not know this, but I haven't spoken to my family in 16 years. Not since they threw me out when I was just 16 years old." The crowd murmured, confused. My mother's smile faltered. "Sarah, sweetheart," she started, but I held up a hand to stop her. I was just a kid when they decided I wasn't worth keeping around. But tonight, they showed. Up here, uninvited, claiming they were proud of me. Claiming they always believed in me. I opened the manila folder. So I thought this would be the perfect time to share some family memories. I pulled out the first document, a police report from 16 years ago. This is the report from the night my brother Marcus was arrested for selling cocaine to high school students. My parents wanted me to lie and say he was home with me that night. When I refused, I shrugged. Well, let's just say they made their choice about which child mattered more. The silence was deafening. My father's face had gone white. Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear. But I wasn't done. Not even close. What I pulled out next would change everything they thought they knew about that night, and reveal a betrayal so deep, it had shaped 16 years of my life. But first, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally? Let me know in the comments, because trust me, this story is just getting started. The second document I pulled from the folder made my hands tremble slightly, but not from nerves. From pure, righteous anger that had been building for 16 years. "This," I said, holding up a bank statement, "is from my college fund. The account my grandmother, my father's mother, set up for me when I was born. She put in $50,000 and added to it every birthday and Christmas until she died when I was 15. I could see my father's face growing paler by the second. My mother had gone completely still. According to this statement, the account was emptied 3 days after I was kicked out. $58,000, withdrawn by my legal guardians. I looked directly at my parents. That would be you too. The gasps from my guests were audible. Several people had their phones out, recording what was clearly becoming the most dramatic housewarming party in history. Sarah, you don't understand, my father started. Oh, but I do understand, I cut him off. Because I hired a private investigator 5 years ago. Want to know what he found? I reached into the folder again, this time pulling out photographs. These are pictures of the new car you bought the week after taking my college money, Dad. And this, I held up another photo, is the receipt for Mom's plastic surgery from the same month. My mother's hand flew to her face, as if trying to hide the nose job she'd gotten with money meant for my education. But wait, there's more, I continued, my voice getting stronger with each revelation. Because the really interesting part isn't what you did with my money. It's why you threw me out in the first place. I pulled out a letter, yellowed with age. This is from my grandmother's lawyer. Apparently, she didn't just leave me college money. She left me her entire estate, the house, the savings, everything. But there was a catch. I had to be 18 and in good standing with the family to inherit it. The realization hit them like a truck. I could see it in their faces, the moment they understood that I knew the truth. You didn't kick me out because I wouldn't lie for Marcus, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. You kicked me out because if you could prove I was estranged from the family, legally emancipated and living elsewhere, the inheritance would revert to my father as the next of kin. My mother started to speak, but I wasn't finished. $250,000, I continued. That's what you stole from me by throwing away your own daughter. The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. My guests were staring in shock. Some were filming, others looked uncomfortable, but no one left. This was better than any reality show. Marcus, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally found his voice. Sarah, come on. We were family. We were struggling. You were just a kid, what did you need that money for anyway? The audacity of that statement hit me like a slap. What did I need it for? I repeated slowly. Let me tell you what I needed it for, Marcus. I walked over to a side table and picked up a photo album, one my guests had been looking through earlier, full of pictures from my life over the past 16 years. I needed it for food, I said, opening the album to a picture of me at 17, obviously too thin, working behind a fast food counter. This was my senior year of high school. I was living in a studio apartment that cost more than half my minimum wage paycheck. I ate ramen noodles for dinner most nights. I flipped to another page. I needed it for college. This is me at community college, studying in the library because my apartment was too cold to concentrate in. I couldn't afford to heat it properly. Another page. This is me at 21, working 3 jobs while going to school full-time. A waitress, a tutor, and cleaning offices at night. I was so exhausted I fell asleep in class and my professor sent me to the campus health center because she was worried about me. My voice was getting stronger, more powerful with each word. I needed that money for the same things every teenager needs: security, education, a chance at a future. But instead, you took it and spent it on toys for yourselves. Rachel, who had been silent this whole time, finally spoke up. Sarah, we didn't know about any of this. We thought you just left. Your parents said you were rebellious and ran away. Did they? I turned to look at her with interest. That's funny, because I sent letters. To all of you. For the first 3 years, I wrote letters every month, trying to explain my side of things, asking to come home, begging for forgiveness for whatever I'd done wrong. I reached into the folder one more time and pulled out a stack of envelopes, all stamped "Return to Sender." "Every single one came back unopened," I said. "They told the post office I didn't live there anymore." My cousin's face crumpled. "Sarah, I swear, we never got any letters." "I know you didn't," I said gently. "Because they were all returned to me." The party had gone completely silent except for the distant sound of traffic from the city below. Even the catering staff had stopped moving, transfixed by the drama unfolding. My father finally found his voice. "Princess, listen. We made mistakes, okay? We were young, we were scared, we were in debt." "Stop calling me princess," I said sharply. "You lost the right to call me that 16 years ago when you chose money over your daughter." "We can make this right," my mother pleaded. "We can pay you back." "We can." "With what?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Dad's failing restaurant? The house you mortgaged 3 times over? The credit cards you maxed out on vacations while I was sleeping on friends' couches?" Their faces told me I'd hit the mark. My private investigator had been very thorough. "Oh yes," I continued, "I know all about your financial situation. I know about the bankruptcy you filed last year. I know about the foreclosure notice you're fighting. I know you came here tonight because you're desperate." Marcus stepped forward aggressively. "So what, you're just going to throw it in our faces? You're rich now, and you're going to watch us struggle?" "Actually," I said with a smile that didn't reach my eyes, "I'm going to do exactly what you did to me 16 years ago." I walked to the front of the group, my voice carrying clearly across the pool deck. "You're going to leave my house right now, and you're never going to contact me again. You're going to go back to your lives and pretend I don't exist, just like you've been doing." "Sarah, please," my mother started crying. "The difference is," I continued, "when you leave here tonight, you'll know exactly what you lost. You'll know that you threw away not just your daughter, but your chance at the life you always wanted. Because I would have taken care of you. If you had loved me, supported me, been there for me when I needed you most, I would have shared everything with you." I gestured to the house, the pool, the view, the life I'd built. "All of this could have been yours too. But you chose money over love once, and that choice cost you everything." My father was crying now too, ugly sobs that shook his whole body. "Please, Sarah. We're family. We love you." "No," I said quietly. "You love what I can do for you now. You love my money, my success, my house. But you never loved me." I turned to address my guests, who were still standing in stunned silence. "I'm sorry everyone had to witness this, but I think it's important sometimes to see what real consequences look like." Then I looked back at my family one last time. "You have 5 minutes to leave my property. If you're not gone by then, I'm calling security." But as they started to gather their things with shaking hands and tear-stained faces, my phone buzzed with a text message that would change everything I thought I knew about that night 16 years ago. The message was from a number I didn't recognize, but the words made my blood freeze. "I've been watching the live stream. We need to talk. There's something about that night you don't know. Something that will change everything. Meet me at Café Luna tomorrow at noon. Come alone. Detective Rodriguez, retired." Detective Rodriguez? The name hit me like a lightning bolt. He was the officer who had handled Marcus's arrest all those years ago. What could he possibly know that would change everything? And how had he been watching a live stream of my party? Drop a comment below. Do you think Sarah should meet with the detective? What secrets could possibly be buried deeper than what she's already uncovered? I barely slept that night. Detective Rodriguez's message played on repeat in my mind, each word carrying weight I couldn't understand yet. By the time I arrived at Cafe Luna the next day, I'd imagined a dozen different scenarios, none of them good. He was already there when I walked in, a man in his 60s with silver hair and tired eyes, sitting in a corner booth with a cup of coffee that looked like it had gone cold hours ago. When he saw me, he stood and extended his hand. "Ms. Torres. Thank you for coming. You said there was something I didn't know about that night," I said, sliding into the booth across from him. "Something that would change everything." He nodded slowly, pulling out a manila folder that looked disturbingly similar to the one I'd used the night before. "I retired 5 years ago after 30 years on the force. Spent most of my career trying to forget about cases like your brother's, young kids making stupid mistakes, families torn apart. But some cases stick with you." "Why?" I asked. Marcus's case wasn't exactly unique. Rich kid selling drugs, parents covering for him. "That's just it," Detective Rodriguez said quietly. "Your parents weren't covering for him." My world tilted sideways. "What do you mean?" He opened the folder and pulled out a police report I'd never seen before. "This is the real report from that night. Not the one that went public, not the one your family saw. The real one." I reached for it with trembling hands. As I read, my understanding of everything, absolutely everything, crumbled. Your brother wasn't selling drugs, Sarah. He was buying them. For your mother. I looked up at him sharply. That's impossible. My mother hated drugs. She barely even drank. Your mother was addicted to painkillers, he continued gently. Started after her back surgery when you were 15. Your father either didn't know or was in complete denial. Marcus was trying to help her, getting pills from street dealers because she'd burned through every legitimate doctor in town. I stared at the report, the words blurring together. But they said he was dealing. They said he was selling to high school kids. That's what we thought initially. Marcus was found with a large quantity of pills, and he fit the profile of a dealer, nice car, expensive clothes, wealthy family. But when we dug deeper, we found the truth. He was meeting with a dealer that night to buy pills for your mother. The dealer got spooked by our surveillance and ran, leaving Marcus holding the bag. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the papers. Then why didn't they tell me? Why did they let me believe he was a dealer? Detective Rodriguez's expression grew even more grave. Because Marcus made a deal. He agreed to plead guilty to possession with intent to distribute, a much more serious charge, in exchange for your mother getting into a private treatment facility instead of facing charges as an accessory. The cafe seemed to spin around me. What charges? Sarah, the pills your brother was buying? They were stolen from a pharmacy. Your mother had been forging prescriptions for months. She was facing felony charges for prescription fraud and theft. Marcus took the fall to save her. I felt like I was going to be sick. And my parents, they asked me to lie because they were terrified, he said simply. They thought if you knew the truth about your mother's addiction, about the stolen pills, about the felony charges hanging over their heads, you'd lose respect for them. They thought it was easier to let you believe Marcus was just a rebellious kid making bad choices. So they let me hate him, I whispered. They let me think he was a drug dealer who was corrupting kids. The irony, Detective Rodriguez continued, is that Marcus specifically requested that you not be told the truth. He said you were the only good thing in the family, the only one with a real future ahead of her, and he didn't want you tainted by their problems. I started crying then, ugly sobs that came from somewhere deep in my chest. 16 years of righteous anger, 16 years of believing my family had chosen a drug dealer over me, 16 years of carrying the weight of being the only one with morals, and it was all based on a lie they told to protect me. There's more, Detective Rodriguez said quietly, and I didn't think I could handle more. Your parents didn't steal your college fund to buy cars and plastic surgery. I looked up at him through my tears. The bank statements are real. They did withdraw the money. But not for themselves. He pulled out another document. This is a receipt from Sunrise Recovery Center. $58,000 for a 6-month intensive residential treatment program. The paper fell from my hands. For my mother? Your mother's addiction was severe, Sarah. She was taking 60 pills a day by the time Marcus was arrested. She needed serious help, the kind that insurance doesn't cover for people like your family. They used your college money to save your mother's life. I couldn't speak. I couldn't think. Everything I'd believed, everything I'd built my anger and my success on, was crumbling around me. But why kick me out? I finally managed to ask. If they were trying to protect me, why throw me away? Detective Rodriguez's face grew pained. Because you weren't supposed to be thrown out. That was never the plan. He reached into the folder one final time and pulled out a letter in my mother's handwriting. This was written the day after Marcus's arrest. It was supposed to be given to you, but... I took the letter with shaking hands. My dearest Sarah. By the time you read this, we'll have told you that Marcus is going away for a while, and that our family needs some time to heal. We're sending you to stay with Aunt Marie in San Diego for the summer while we get help for some problems we should have dealt with a long time ago. I know you must be confused and scared. I know you must have questions about what happened with Marcus and why we can't explain everything right now. But I need you to know that none of this is your fault, and all of this is because we love you too much to let you get caught up in our mess. Your father and I made mistakes. Big ones. And now we have to fix them. But we don't want you to pay the price for our failures. You're smart and good and you have such a bright future ahead of you. We won't let our problems dim that light. We'll write to you every week while you're with Aunt Marie. And when we've gotten the help we need, when we've made things right, we'll bring you home to a family that deserves you. You are the best thing we ever did, sweetheart. Don't ever forget that. All our love. Mom and Dad. But I never went to Aunt Marie's, I whispered. I never got this letter. Detective Rodriguez nodded grimly. Because your father changed his mind at the last minute. He was so overwhelmed by everything, Marcus's arrest, your mother's addiction, the financial pressure, the media attention, that he panicked. He thought having you around would make everything more complicated. So instead of sending you to San Diego temporarily, he threw me out permanently, I finished. Your mother was already in treatment. She had no say in the decision. By the time she got out 6 months later and found out what had happened, you were gone. She had a breakdown and had to go back into treatment. I felt like I was drowning in revelations. The letters I sent. Your father intercepted them. He was convinced that any contact would just make the separation harder for everyone. He thought he was protecting the family by keeping you away. And my inheritance? Detective Rodriguez looked confused. What inheritance? I explained about my grandmother's estate, about the money I'd accused them of stealing. His face grew sad. Sarah, your grandmother left everything to your father, not you. The will was very clear. She didn't trust teenagers with money and wanted your father to use it for your college education when the time came. But when you left, he spent it on my mother's treatment, I realized. Every penny. And when that ran out, he mortgaged the house, maxed out credit cards, took loans from anyone who would give them money. Your parents bankrupted themselves trying to save your mother and hoping to have enough left over for your college when you came home. The cafe was closing around us, chairs being stacked on tables, but neither of us moved. I sat there, surrounded by the wreckage of everything I'd believed about my life. They never stopped loving you, Sarah, Detective Rodriguez said gently. They never stopped hoping you'd come home. Your father hired 3 different private investigators over the years to track you down, but you changed your name legally and covered your tracks well. I wanted to disappear, I whispered. You succeeded. But they never stopped looking. I thought about the night before, about my parents' faces when I'd accused them of choosing money over me. About the pain in their eyes that I'd mistaken for guilt over being caught. How do you know all this? I asked. Because your father called me every year on the anniversary of Marcus's arrest. He'd ask if there was anything new, any way to reopen the case, anything that might bring you home. He blamed himself for everything, Marcus's arrest, your mother's addiction, losing you. The guilt was eating him alive. Is eating him alive, I corrected. He's still alive. Actually, Detective Rodriguez said quietly, your father had a massive heart attack 3 months ago. He's alive, but barely. That's why I was watching the live stream last night. Your cousin Rachel posted it on social media, hoping it would go viral and somehow reach you. Your family wasn't there to get money from you, Sarah. They were there because they thought it might be their last chance to apologize before your father dies. The world stopped spinning. Everything went quiet except for the sound of my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. My father was dying, and I'd spent his last night on earth humiliating him in front of strangers. I'd taken 16 years of pain and misunderstanding and thrown it in his face like a weapon. But there was still time. There had to be. Because I'd just learned that everything I'd built my life on was a lie, and I had no idea what to do with that knowledge. Have you ever discovered that everything you believed about your past was wrong? How do you rebuild your life when the foundation was made of sand? Let me know in the comments, because I was about to find out. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. I stood outside room 314 for 20 minutes before I could bring myself to push open the door. Detective Rodriguez had offered to come with me, but this was something I had to do alone. My father looked so small in that hospital bed, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed with electronic life. His face was gray, his breathing shallow, and when he saw me standing in the doorway, tears immediately started rolling down his cheeks. Princess, he whispered, and the word that had made me so angry just 2 days before now broke my heart completely. Hi, Dad. I moved closer to the bed, my legs feeling like they might give out at any moment. How are you feeling? He tried to laugh, but it came out as more of a cough. Like an old man who made too many mistakes. My mother was sitting in the chair beside his bed, and she looked like she'd aged 20 years since I'd seen her 2 nights ago. Her eyes were red from crying, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Sarah, she said softly, we never thought, we never expected. I know. I pulled up another chair and sat down. I talked to Detective Rodriguez. The look that passed between my parents was a mixture of relief and terror. All of it? My father asked. All of it. We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of 16 years of misunderstanding heavy in the sterile air. I'm sorry, my father finally said, his voice barely audible. I'm so sorry, princess. I thought I was protecting you, but I was just a coward. I was scared and overwhelmed, and I made the worst decision of my life. We both did, my mother added. Every day for 16 years, we regretted letting you go. Every single day. I reached for my father's hand, surprised by how fragile it felt in mine. I'm sorry too, I said. I'm sorry I believed the worst about you. I'm sorry I never tried harder to understand what really happened. I'm sorry I was so angry for so long. You had every right to be angry, he said. We failed you when you needed us most. You were trying to protect me, I said. It was misguided and it went horribly wrong, but you were trying to protect me. My mother started crying again. We missed everything. Your graduation, your first job, your success, your life. We missed all of it because we were too proud and too scared to admit we'd made a mistake. But I'm here now, I said, and realized it was true. For the first time in 16 years, I was really, truly here. Not the angry, defensive version of myself I'd been carrying around, but the real me. The me who had once been their daughter and could be again. How's Mom doing? I asked. I mean, with the addiction? 12 years clean, my father said with the first real smile I'd seen from him. It wasn't easy, but she did it. We did it. The hardest part, my mother said, wasn't getting clean. It was living with what it cost us. What it cost you. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the selfish woman I'd imagined for 16 years, but a person who had fought a battle I couldn't even comprehend and won. Where's Marcus? I asked. Jail, my father said simply. He's been in and out for years. Different charges, different mistakes. I think losing you broke something in him that never healed. My heart clenched. Because of the lie? Because he had to let me believe he was a dealer? Because he blamed himself for everything that happened after, my mother said. He was supposed to protect you, and instead he felt like he was the reason we lost you. I need to see him, I said. Sarah, my father said carefully, Marcus isn't the same person you remember. Prison has been hard on him. He's angry, bitter. He might not be ready for this. Maybe not, I agreed. But I need to try. My father squeezed my hand weakly. There's something else you should know. About your success, your company. I looked at him questioningly. We've been following your career for years, he said. We have newspaper clippings, magazine articles, everything we could find. We were so proud of what you'd accomplished, but we never felt like we had the right to celebrate it. You did, I said firmly. You always had that right. When your company went public, my mother continued, your father bought stock. Not much, we didn't have much, but he bought what he could because he wanted to be part of your success somehow, even if you never knew it. The restaurant that's failing, my father said with a weak smile, we named it Sarah's after you. We couldn't have you, but we could honor you. I started crying then, really crying, for the first time since I was 16 years old. All the anger I'd been carrying, all the hurt and resentment and pain, came pouring out of me like water through a broken dam. I would have helped, I sobbed. If I'd known, if I'd understood, I would have helped with everything. The restaurant, the medical bills, Marcus's legal fees. I would have taken care of all of you. We know, my father said. We've always known. That's the kind of person you are, the kind of person we raised you to be. But we didn't deserve that kindness. Not after what we did. Yes, you did, I said firmly. You made mistakes, but you made them out of love. Misguided love, but love nonetheless. Over the next few hours, we talked about everything, my life, their struggles, the family we used to be and the family we could still become. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when the old anger flared up on both sides, but we worked through it together. My father was getting tired, his breathing more labored, when he asked the question I'd been dreading. What happens now, princess? Can you forgive us enough to let us be part of your life again? I thought about my house in the hills, so beautiful and so empty. I thought about the success I'd achieved and how hollow it had felt when I had no one to share it with. I thought about the family I'd chosen, my friends, my colleagues, the people who had supported me through the years, and realized they could coexist with the family I'd been born into. I have an idea, I said. The restaurant that's failing, what if it wasn't failing anymore? My parents looked at each other, confused. What if it had a new investor? Someone who believed in family businesses and second chances? What if it had the resources to not just survive, but thrive? Sarah, you can't, my mother started. I can, and I will, I said. But not as a handout. As a partnership. I invest in the restaurant, help it grow, maybe turn it into a chain. And in return, you let me be your daughter again. My father was crying again, but this time they were tears of joy. Are you sure? After everything we did to you? I'm sure, I said. But I have conditions. They waited, holding their breath. First, we all go to family therapy. Together. We need professional help to work through 16 years of pain and misunderstanding. Second, complete honesty from now on. No more lies to protect each other, no more secrets. And third, we take this slow. I'm not moving back home tomorrow and pretending nothing happened. We rebuild trust one day at a time. Anything, my father whispered. Whatever you need. And I want to help Marcus too, I added. When he gets out, when he's ready, I want to help him rebuild his life. My mother reached over and took my other hand. Thank you, she said simply. Thank you for giving us another chance. As I sat there between my parents, holding their hands and feeling like I was finally home after 16 years of wandering, I realized something profound. Revenge wasn't what I thought it was. Real revenge wasn't about making people pay for their mistakes. Real revenge was about proving that love could survive anything, even betrayal, even abandonment, even the worst kinds of pain. The machines kept beeping, monitoring my father's fragile heart, but in that moment, I felt like all of our hearts were finally beating in rhythm again. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of the newly renovated Sarah's restaurant, our restaurant, watching my mother teach the new head chef her secret recipe for tres leches cake. My father, recovered enough to work limited hours, was in the dining room charming customers and telling anyone who would listen about his brilliant daughter who had saved the family business. It wasn't perfect. We still went to therapy every week. There were still moments when the old hurt surfaced, when trust felt fragile, when the weight of those lost 16 years felt overwhelming. But we were a family again, and that was worth more than all the money in the world. Marcus was getting out of prison in 2 months, and we were already making plans for his future. I'd bought a small house for him to stay in during his transition, and we'd found a program that would help him get back on his feet. He was nervous about seeing me again, but we'd been writing letters, and slowly, carefully, we were rebuilding the relationship we'd lost. My housewarming party had gone viral, just like Rachel had hoped, but not for the reasons any of us expected. The video of me confronting my family had been shared millions of times, with most people praising me for standing up for myself. But the comments that meant the most to me were from people sharing their own stories of family estrangement, of misunderstandings that had torn families apart, of the courage it took to forgive and rebuild. I'd started a foundation using the profits from the restaurant chain we were building, the Second Chances Foundation, dedicated to helping families navigate addiction, mental health issues, and reconciliation. Detective Rodriguez had come on as our first board member, bringing decades of experience with families in crisis. The house in the hills was still beautiful, but it wasn't empty anymore. My parents came for dinner every Sunday, and the photo albums were full of new memories, birthdays we celebrated together, holidays that felt like healing, ordinary moments that felt extraordinary because we were sharing them as a family. I kept the manila folder from that night, not as a weapon anymore, but as a reminder. A reminder that the truth is usually more complicated than we think, that people make mistakes out of love as often as they do out of malice, and that sometimes the greatest strength we can show is the courage to forgive. As I watched my mother laugh with the kitchen staff, her eyes bright and healthy, her hands steady as she worked, I thought about the girl I used to be, angry, alone, determined to succeed just to prove them all wrong. That girl had gotten me where I needed to be, had built the foundation for the life I was living now. But she'd also been carrying a burden that was never hers to bear. The woman I was now understood something that girl couldn't: success without love is just loneliness with better furniture. Money without family is just numbers in an account. Revenge without forgiveness is just pain that refuses to heal. That night, as I locked up the restaurant and headed home to my beautiful house that was finally full of love, I got a text message that made me smile. It was from my father. "Good night, princess. Sweet dreams. I love you." I typed back, "I love you too, Dad. See you tomorrow." And for the first time in 16 years, I meant it completely. Have you ever had to choose between being right and being happy? Have you experienced the kind of forgiveness that changes everything? Share your story in the comments, because sometimes the most powerful revenge is choosing love over anger and healing over hurt. 1 year later. The morning sun streamed through the windows of my office at the Second Chances Foundation, casting long shadows across the stack of applications on my desk. Each folder represented a family in crisis, people who had found our foundation through word of mouth, social media, or referrals from therapists and social workers. What had started as a way to process my own family's healing had become something much bigger. My assistant, Jenny, knocked on the door frame. "Sarah? The Martinez family is here for their appointment." I looked up from the application I was reading, a teenage girl whose parents had kicked her out after she refused to cover for her brother's gambling addiction. The parallels to my own story were heartbreaking and all too common. "Send them in," I said, closing the folder and preparing myself for another story of love complicated by pride, fear, and misunderstanding. The Martinez family filed in, parents in their 40s who looked like they hadn't slept in months, and a sullen 17-year-old girl who kept her eyes fixed on the floor. I'd seen this dynamic hundreds of times over the past year, and it never got easier. "Please, sit down," I said gently. "I'm Sarah Torres. Thank you for coming in today." Mrs. Martinez clutched her purse tightly. "We saw your story online. The video from your party, and then the follow-up interview you did about your family. We thought, We hoped maybe you could help us. Tell me what's happening, I said. For the next hour, I listened to a story that was both uniquely theirs and universally familiar. Their son had developed a gambling addiction, stealing money from them to pay debts. When they discovered it, they'd asked their daughter to lie to the police about his whereabouts the night their neighbor's car had been broken into, money for gambling debts. She'd refused, just like I had, and in their panic and shame, they'd made the same choice my parents had. They'd chosen the child who needed protecting over the child who was trying to do right. We've been estranged for 8 months, Mr. Martinez said, his voice breaking. She's living with her aunt, but she won't talk to us. We don't know how to fix this. I looked at their daughter, Maria, 17, angry, and so much like myself at that age that it took my breath away. Maria, I said quietly, would you be willing to tell me your side? She looked up for the first time, her eyes blazing with the same righteous fury I'd carried for 16 years. They chose him, she said simply. They knew he was stealing, they knew he was lying, and when it came down to protecting him or doing the right thing, they chose him. I understand, I said, and meant it. That's exactly how I felt about my family for a very long time. But you forgave them, she said, and there was something in her voice, not quite hope, but maybe the possibility of it. Eventually, I said. But it took learning the whole truth, not just the part that fit my anger. Over the next 2 hours, we talked, really talked, in a way I suspected this family hadn't done in months. I shared my story, not the sanitized version from interviews, but the real, messy, complicated truth about love and fear and the terrible choices people make when they're overwhelmed. By the end of the session, Maria was crying in her mother's arms, and Mr. Martinez was holding both of them like he was afraid they might disappear. This is just the beginning, I told them as they prepared to leave. Healing takes time, and trust has to be rebuilt. But if you're all willing to do the work, you can have your family back. After they left, I sat in my office thinking about the ripple effect of that night at my housewarming party. The video had been shared over 10 million times, spawning countless discussions about family, forgiveness, and the complexity of human relationships. But more than that, it had opened a door for people to tell their own stories, to seek help, to believe that reconciliation was possible. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Marcus, calling from the apartment I'd helped him get after his release from prison 6 months ago. Hey, sis, he said, and even though it had taken us months of therapy and careful conversations to get to the point where we could talk casually, I still smiled every time he called me that. Hey yourself. How was your meeting with the parole officer? Good news, he said, and I could hear the excitement in his voice. They approved my request to start the culinary program at the community college. I can start next semester. Marcus, that's incredible. I said, genuinely thrilled. My brother had discovered a passion for cooking during our family therapy sessions, when we'd started having regular family dinners as part of our healing process. Have you told Mom and Dad? Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. You're the one who believed I could do this when I didn't even believe it myself. The truth was, Marcus's journey had been harder than any of ours. The guilt he'd carried for 16 years, for the choices that led to my exile, for not fighting harder to bring me home, for the years of addiction and crime that followed, had nearly destroyed him. But slowly, with therapy and the support of family who finally understood the truth, he was rebuilding himself into the person he'd always had the potential to be. I'm proud of you, I said, and meant it completely. I'm proud of all of us, he replied. Who would have thought that disaster of a housewarming party would turn into something this good? After we hung up, I walked to the window and looked out at the city below. My foundation occupied the top floor of a downtown building, and from here I could see the original location of Sarah's restaurant, which had become the flagship of what was now a chain of 12 locations across 3 states. Each restaurant employed people getting second chances, former addicts, ex-convicts, people rebuilding their lives after family estrangement or personal crises. My parents were at the original location right now, I knew, preparing for the lunch rush. Dad's health had stabilized, and while he couldn't work the long hours he once had, he was thriving in his role as the face of the business, sharing our family's story with customers and inspiring other families to believe in second chances. Mom had become the chain's head of training, teaching new managers not just about running a restaurant, but about creating environments where people felt valued and supported. Her own experience with addiction and recovery had made her incredibly effective at identifying team members who were struggling and connecting them with resources. Jenny knocked on my door frame again. "Sarah? There's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important." "Send her in," I said, turning away from the window. The woman who walked into my office was probably in her 50s, well-dressed but with tired eyes that spoke of recent trauma. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. "Ms. Torres," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "My name is Patricia Williams. I think you knew my daughter." My blood went cold. Patricia Williams. The name clicked into place along with the memory of a news story I'd seen months ago, a young woman named Jessica Williams who had died by suicide after being estranged from her family for 3 years. "I'm so sorry for your loss," I said quietly, gesturing for her to sit down. She clutched a tissue in her hands, tears already starting to fall. "Jessica saw your video," she said. "The night before we lost her. She called me for the first time in 3 years. She said she'd seen a woman talking about family and forgiveness, and she wanted to try to work things out with us." My heart broke for this woman, for the daughter she'd lost, for the conversation that had come too late. "She was supposed to come home the next weekend," Patricia continued. "We were going to start over, just like your family did. But that night, she took too many pills. The police said it was accidental, she was mixing medications for anxiety and depression, but I know she was nervous about seeing us again. I know the stress of trying to rebuild contributed to what happened." I didn't know what to say. In all the positive responses to our story, I'd never considered that it might give someone false hope, or that the pressure to reconcile might be too much for some people. "I'm not here to blame you," Patricia said quickly, seeing my expression. "I'm here because I want to help make sure this doesn't happen to other families. Your foundation, what you're doing, it's important work. But some families need more intensive support, more mental health resources. Some people need to heal themselves before they can heal their relationships." She pulled out a check and placed it on my desk. "This is from Jessica's life insurance policy. I want to donate it to your foundation, but specifically to create a program for families dealing with mental health issues alongside estrangement." I looked at the check, $50,000, and then at this grieving mother who had found the strength to turn her loss into something that might save other families. "We'll call it the Jessica Williams Mental Health Initiative," I said. "If that's okay with you." She nodded, tears flowing freely now. She would have liked that. She always wanted to help people. After Patricia left, I sat alone in my office, thinking about the weight of influence, the responsibility that came with sharing our story so publicly. Not every family could be saved. Not every estrangement could be healed. Some people were too damaged by their experiences, too broken by years of pain, to find their way back to love. But that didn't mean we should stop trying. If anything, Jessica's story reinforced the importance of what we were doing, providing professional support, mental health resources, and realistic expectations for families attempting reconciliation. That evening, I drove to my parents' house for our weekly family dinner. It was a modest home in a middle-class neighborhood, nothing like the mansion they'd lived in when I was a child, but it felt more like home than any place I'd ever lived. Marcus was already there, helping Dad set the table while Mom finished cooking. The scene was so ordinary, so beautifully normal, that I had to pause in the doorway to take it in. "There's our girl," Dad said, looking up with a smile that still made me feel like I was the most important person in the world. As we sat around the dinner table, sharing stories from our week and making plans for the weekend, I thought about Patricia Williams and her daughter Jessica. I thought about the Martinez family and their tentative steps toward healing. I thought about all the families we'd helped over the past year, and all the ones we still might save. "You're quiet tonight, Princess," Dad said. "Everything okay?" I looked around the table at these people who had once been strangers to me, who had hurt me deeply and whom I had hurt in return. These imperfect people who loved imperfectly but genuinely, who had made terrible mistakes but found the courage to make amends. "I was just thinking," I said, "about how lucky we are." "Lucky?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "We put each other through hell for 16 years. "Exactly," I said. "We put each other through hell, and we still found our way back to love. Not everyone gets that chance." Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. "Not everyone takes that chance, even when they get it." "True," I agreed. "It would have been easier to stay angry. Safer to keep our walls up. But we chose to be brave instead." "We chose each other," Dad said simply. As we cleared the dishes and moved to the living room to watch a movie together, another ordinary miracle in our rebuilt life, I felt the deep satisfaction of a life lived with purpose. My success in business had given me financial freedom, but my work with the foundation had given me something far more valuable, the knowledge that our story was helping other families find their way home to each other. The last thing I did before leaving that night was update my social media accounts with a photo of our family dinner and a message. 2 years ago, I thought revenge meant making people pay for their mistakes. Tonight, I know that real revenge is proving that love can survive anything. To all the families out there struggling with estrangement, addiction, mental health issues, or just the messy complications of being human together, there is always hope. There is always a chance for healing. You just have to be brave enough to take it. The responses started pouring in immediately, hundreds of comments from people sharing their own stories, asking for advice, offering support to each other. I smiled as I read them, knowing that every conversation sparked by our story was another family potentially saved, another person choosing love over anger. That's the real power of forgiveness. It doesn't just heal the people directly involved. It ripples outward, touching lives you'll never even know about. Have you ever experienced the ripple effect of choosing love over anger? Share your story in the comments, because somewhere out there, someone needs to hear that healing is possible. The end.